Hello, this is Lilian, welcoming you to the 1893rd edition of the Enfield Talking Newspaper, Dateline, the 21st of February 2013. The readers this week are Joan, Beverley, Rod and myself, Lilian, with Colin on the controls. Local stories include Groups in the Dark over Health Watch handover, Change Code urges a coroner, this was not your fault, and you're fired. And I have two special news items. Both are dealing with the same subject. The first one is Enfield Safeguarding Adults Board is setting up a small group of patients, service users and carers to provide feedback on its work to protect adults at risk in the borough. The group wishes to include a partially sighted or blind person to help ensure a balanced representation of views. If you are interested in joining the group, which meets monthly, or would like more information, please contact Georgina Deba, that's spelt D for David, I, B for Brother, A, by phone on 0208 379 4432. And a bit about safeguarding adult abuse. Would you know how to recognize if someone you know is being abused? Would you know what to do? Everyone has the right to be free from abuse, free from harm and free from neglect. Abuse is a violation of an individual's human and civil rights by any other person or persons, and it is often a crime. Abuse is always wrong. Although we know that most people are well cared for, some adults are at risk of abuse. It could be because of the person's mental capacity, age or disability, and how that is perceived by the people around them. Abuse can take many forms, including physical, emotional, financial, sexual, discriminatory, institutional, and neglect, for example. An older woman whose care worker has been taking money from her purse, a carer who is unwell and physically abused by the son she looks after. These types of incidents of abuse and crimes remain largely unreported. They are often perpetrated by someone known to the victim and in a position of trust, such as a family member or paid care worker. If you or someone you know is being abused, or if you suspect abuse, please do not keep silent. There is a single point of contact where you will be listened to and your concerns taken seriously. Please call the Enfield Adult Abuse Line on 0208 379 5212. That is 0208 379 5212. Thank you. Over to Joan now, who will read the first item of local news.
A councillor has been sacked by the Conservative group after Islamophobic comments appeared on his Facebook page. Councillor Ioannidis had the whip permanently withdrawn at a meeting of the Enfield Conservative group on Monday night last week. A spokeswoman said the councillor had brought the group into disrepute. Mr. Ioannidis became embroiled in a row over images and comments that appeared on his personal Facebook profile after printouts were shown to his party and the press last month. He was suspended by Enfield's Conservative leader, Michael Lavender, while the group investigated. Mr. Lavender said, "We are an inclusive group with members drawn from many ethnic communities and faiths. We will continue to work hard to represent all of the diverse communities which make Enfield the unique and vibrant borough it is. So far, Mr. Hornades has not apologized, and although he has admitted he shared the controversial images and comments on his own Facebook page, he has denied he is Islamophobic and claims his posts have been carefully edited to make him appear that way. In a statement he said, "I am extremely saddened by what has happened. I have never denied that some of my actions on Facebook caused upset. I have been portrayed as Islamophobic by some carefully edited posts to portray me as such. It is an easy mistake to make in the world of election mass communications. I hope the Conservative group will take this opportunity to introduce a code of conduct and guidance on how to deal with these situations online. I certainly wouldn't want anyone else to go through this." Mr. Hornades remains a councillor for Grange Ward as an independent Conservative and will hold monthly surgeries on the first Saturday of every month at Palmer's Green Library in Green Lanes. Reporters were excluded from a meeting convened to discuss the behaviour of an Enfield councillor last week. The Councillor Conduct Committee met at the Civic Centre in Silver Street last Thursday. Before the meeting began, reporters were told to leave by a council lawyer, despite appeals that it was in the public interest to report on an investigation into a councillor's conduct. Council chiefs refused to confirm the identity of the councillor concerned. A council spokeswoman explained that press had been stopped from reporting on the meeting so as not to compromise the investigation. Now, the Advertiser has this comment with a title, "We all have a right to know." When our local politicians are running for elected office, it seems as if they cannot get enough of their mugs in the press. We cannot escape their pleas for votes, their demands for justice, their babies kissing antics, and their oh so sincere promises. But when they fall from grace, they become protected by a thick layer of bureaucratic obfuscation and jargon. At the very time we have a right to know exactly what is happening, drawbridges are pulled up and no one can confirm, deny, or even be allowed to speculate. Residents are not idiots. They know that when a politician falls from grace, there will be consequences. But we have a right to know which councillors are facing accusations and what exactly the accusations are. Anything else just smacks of a cover-up.
A coroner told the parents of a newborn baby who died suddenly that nothing could have been done to save her life. 12-day-old Jessica Naomi Clark from Brookside in Winchmore Hill died on July 15th last year in Chase Farm Hospital in the Ridgeway after contracting complications from a rare virus either at birth or during the week before her death. Her parents, Natalie and Simon Clark, broke down when they heard medical experts recount their daughter's final days during the inquest into her death at North London Coroner's Court in Barnet yesterday. Mrs. Clark said she alerted midwives to Jessica's unusual breathing, which she said sounded like grunting, during the 6 days before her death. However, tests undertaken by midwives showed no signs of ill health, and Jessica continued to eat well and gain weight as expected. It was only during the baby's post-mortem that her condition, encephalomyocarditis, caused by Coxsackie virus B1 infection was identified. Medical professionals, including paediatric senior house officer Dr. Alexander Moylan and paediatric registrar Dr. Rhiann Davies, told the inquest they carried out extensive checks and were given no real reason to believe Jessica was unhealthy. However, the baby's health deteriorated rapidly when she returned home, and doctors at the hospital were unable to revive her. Doctors claimed an ultrasound test could have picked up Jessica's condition, but said they would only have ordered the screening if there had been a real cause for concern. Coroner Walker asked if blood screening should be brought in to test babies for the virus if there were concerns about their health. However, the doctors explained cases were so rare and symptoms so difficult to pick up that this would be unlikely to help the situation. The coroner said there was no other verdict that could be reached other than death due to natural causes. Coroner Walker told Mr. and Mrs. Clark, "It is very important you don't think for a moment that there is something that you should have done or whether there would have been anything that could have changed the outcome of this case. This was not your fault. It was a tragedy, and I know there is nothing I will be able to say that will make this any easier to bear, but you have my sympathies nonetheless." The family thanked the doctors for their professionalism and care when looking after their daughter. Mrs. Clark said, "There is nothing more that could have been done. We understand that." Mr. and Mrs. Clark have raised more than £3,500 to date for charity SANDS, that's SANDS, which supports anyone who is affected by the death of a baby. To visit their fundraising page, go to www.justgiving.com/Natalie and Simon-Clark.
A coroner has called for a change to the highway code after a pensioner was knocked down and killed as he crossed a road in Palmer's Green. Costas Marinos, 79, of New River Crescent, Palmer's Green, was hit in Hedge Lane at about 1:20 p.m. on March 19th last year after going out to visit a friend in nearby Firs Lane. He suffered serious head injuries and was taken to the Royal London Hospital in Whitechapel, East London, where he died 10 days later. No charges were brought against the driver, Paul Warner, and coroner Andrew Walker recorded a verdict of accidental death at an inquest on Thursday. However, Mr. Walker said the highway code should include advice to drivers on what to do when pedestrians are in the road. North London Coroner's Court heard that Mr. Warner had been driving west at about 30 miles per hour along the single carriageway. Mr. Warner said that Mr. Marinos had been standing in the eastbound lane and facing away from him moments before the crash. "About 100 yards back was when I first observed him," he told the court. "The person was motionless. I do not remember doing this, but it would have been in character for me to indicate with the horn. I was within a matter of feet, and the gentleman turned his head slightly to his left and just went straight across in front of me." Farah Cokham, who had been driving behind Mr. Warner, said that Mr. Marinos had been crossing the road. "He was walking fast," she told the court. "I can't say he was running, but he was walking fast." Delivering his verdict, Mr. Walker said claims that Mr. Marinos had been standing still before stepping in front of the car did not add up. However, he said a statement by William Proctor, who heard the crash while working on a nearby building site, supported Mr. Warner's claim that he had sounded his horn and tried to brake just before the crash. He added, "I'm going to write to the Department for Transport to suggest that there is an amendment to the highway code saying that when a pedestrian is in the road, vehicles should slow down or stop until the pedestrian has moved out of danger."
Council chiefs have come under fire from health campaigners who say the new NHS watchdog remains shrouded in uncertainty. Enfield Health Watch will replace the local involvement network and represent patients on forums that will decide health and social care strategies for the borough. But just 40 days before Health Watch is due to be formed, the chairman or woman, the members of the board and the chief executive are all yet to be appointed. Monty Meth from the Enfield Over 50s Forum has expressed dismay that Enfield Council has advertised only for a part-time chairman or chairperson, who will be responsible for appointing the new chief executive. Mr. Meth said the new organisation must be capable of not only representing the views of more than 300,000 Enfield residents, but also develop a new complaints and advocacy service and monitor the performance of 3 local hospitals and 54 GP surgeries. When the scandal at Stafford Hospital unfolded, there were links operating there, and these organisations proved ineffective there in raising the alarm. This is a golden opportunity to develop a patient-led organisation, and one we cannot afford to miss. There are questions to be asked. The Council's consultation has been poor. The government has not prescribed clearly what its role should be, and it has not given enough money to fulfil its role. Enfield Health Watch, which will have a budget of £250,000, will operate alongside the new clinical commission group that will commission health services in Enfield. It will represent patients on a new Enfield Health and Wellbeing Board, a forum comprising representatives from the Council and the CCG, which will plan NHS services and address health inequalities in the borough. Don McGowan, the Council's Cabinet Member for Adult Services, Care and Health, said, "We are committed to help develop an effective and independent Health Watch organisation and will ensure that the chairman or chairperson, once appointed, works with local representatives to build an effective and sustainable voice for local people." A spokeswoman for Enfield Link said, "We are disappointed at the way the council has handled the transition. Since the consultation with stakeholders, the link and the wider community not being adequately kept in the picture. We are also concerned about whether Enfield Health Watch will be truly independent as it is meant to be."
A popular student who died when he was struck by a train has been remembered as an inspirational character. William Davis, 16, from Winchmore Hill, who was widely known as Charlie, was pronounced dead at the scene after he was hit by the train at Cheshunt Railway Station in Hertfordshire at approximately 2 p.m. last Tuesday. A post-mortem ruled the teenager died from multiple injuries. An inquest has been opened and adjourned until a later date. Tributes have been left to Charlie, who was studying national engineering at Hertford Regional College in Broxbourne. Andy Forbes, principal at the college, said, "Charlie, as he liked to be called, was a polite, well-spoken and enthusiastic student who showed a particular interest in information technology and his engineering course." He said, "Staff and students had been told about the tragic event and have received professional support from counsellors outside the college." Peter Bishop, Charlie's engineering teacher, said, "I would describe Charlie as full of curiosity about the world. He always questioned and challenged and showed tenacity when dealing with a task. He had a pleasant manner, with a hint of humour that was always present." The teenager, who had previously attended Highland School and St Paul's Church of England Primary School, was a dedicated explorer scout who joined the 5th Southgate Scouts group in Winchmore Hill 10 years ago. Chris Foster, Assistant County Commissioner for Scouts aged 14 to 24, said, "Charlie will be remembered for the positive impact he made on people. He was an inspirational character who loved camping." His 3 favourite scouting events were taking part in the Denmark Jamboree and Gilwell 24 last summer, and completing the 2012 Southern 50 hiking competition in freezing conditions, which he did, having evaded the kit check, finishing the event wearing trainers and without a coat. Charlie followed in the footsteps of his 2 older brothers by joining the Beavers, Cubs and Scouts. His friend, Assistant Explorer Leader Emily Theobald, said, "Charlie will be missed by everyone. He lit up the hearts of all of those around him, and he will never be forgotten. We love and miss him dearly." Bill Brand, District Explorer Scout Commissioner for Southgate District, said, "The Scouts were deeply saddened to learn about Charlie's sudden death." He said, "Charlie was immensely popular with his fellow Scouts and left a positive impression on everyone he met. He was always keen to help and be involved, always polite, and will always be loved and remembered by everyone who knew him. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends."
Council bosses in Enfield thought they would be the first local authority in the country to enforce a spitting ban, but it appears they have been beaten to it by one of their neighbours. Waltham Forest Council announced last week that people caught spitting in public will be fined up to £80, in the same way as residents are punished for littering. As well as spitting, people in Waltham Forest will also be fined for urinating in public, and the council meted out the first £50 fine to a man caught relieving himself in the street last week. However, according to lawyers working for Enfield Council, the new fines might not be legal. Enfield has been lobbying the government for more than a year to allow the council to draw up a bylaw to prohibit spitting in public. Last year, 3,750 people signed a petition demanding that the filthy habit be banned in the borough. Council bosses presented the government with the petition in February and submitted a final bid in July. But in October, the Department for Communities and Local Government called on the council to provide more details on what efforts it had made to discourage spitting since the bid was made. The authority did so and is still waiting for a response from the department. Chris Bond, Enfield's Cabinet Member for Environment, said, "At the beginning of our campaign, we looked at the solution Waltham Forest found, but were advised it would be illegal by our lawyers as well as the government. I wish Waltham Forest good luck with it, but it might be illegal, and either way, a bylaw is not yet in place. At the moment, we are still going back and forth with the DCLG. I feel sorry for all the people who signed our petition. The government really needs to pull its finger out and do something." A spokesman from Waltham Forest said the action it had taken was legal and added that it was using powers already available to the council concerning littering and was classifying spitting as waste. Until 22 years ago, spitting in public carried a £5 fine, enforceable by litter wardens. But since 1990, there has been no law against it. Under Enfield Council's proposals, anyone caught spitting in the street could be hit with a fine, which, if unpaid, could lead to prosecution and a £5,000 fine.
The Enfield Town Post Office will reopen on Friday morning following an 8-day refurbishment. The office, in Church Street, Enfield, which closed last Wednesday, is being modernised and will have 7 new serving positions. Opening hours will remain unchanged and the branch will reopen at 9 a.m. on Friday. Until then, the nearest alternative post offices are the Ponders End branch in 168 High Street, Ponders End, and the Lancaster Road branch in Enfield. Post Office Regional Network Manager for South and East England, Mark Lawrence, said, "We understand how important having a post office is to residents in Enfield, and we are confident that this new, modern post office service will meet the needs of the local community and secure services for the future. This modernisation is part of a 3-year investment programme, the largest in the history of the post office, that will see around 6,000 post offices converted to new-style branches. This investment makes a commitment to no more branch closures." The post office, now independent of Royal Mail, is the largest retail network in the UK with more than 11,500 branches.
A man was rushed to hospital yesterday morning after he was rescued from a house fire in Southgate. 2 fire engines and about 10 firefighters rushed to the 2-storey semi-detached house in Bourne Avenue at around 8 a.m. before rescuing the man, believed to be 60, who was on the ground floor. He suffered a suspected heart attack and was taken to Whipps Cross Hospital in Leytonstone for treatment. A London ambulance spokesman said extensive efforts were made to resuscitate the patient, both on the scene and on the way to Whipps Cross Hospital. The fire was brought under control by around 9 a.m. No one else was in the building at the time. The cause of the blaze, which damaged a quarter of the ground floor, is being investigated. We have reached the end of side 1 for this tape. Please stop your machine now, take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.